Alright guys, so we are going to answer the questions that you guys posted on our community post that we did last week since we weren't doing a live stream. We got lots of feedback from the previous one that we did. You guys really seemed to like that setup where Will just sat down and literally read through questions that you guys had posted and answered them. So we're actually going to do that again. And so we have, I believe, 86 comments on this one. I don't think I'll make it through all 86, but I'll get through as many as I can. I am only going to read the first name because a lot of the last names I feel like I'm going to butcher and don't really want to do that. So, Jeff is the first one on here. Jeff is a Patreon of ours, and he posted this question 3 days ago asking, what are Enzo and Lotus's most embarrassing moments in public? For me, I feel like it's really embarrassing when we're like in Lowe's or Home Depot or somewhere and one of them bark. So Will is a lot more immune to that than I am. Yeah, he's over here. He's like, I don't care. It doesn't bother him as much as it does for me, but for me, as trained as they are, I feel like when they do that, I get a little bit embarrassed. Like I said, Will's a little bit more immune. Enzo has had a couple incidents like out in public. He's just very aloof. So when he was a lot younger, one of his most embarrassing moments were probably him running into a pole. He was running and looking back at Will and literally ran into a handicap pole for a parking spot. And he wasn't like seriously injured or anything like that. It did scare him, obviously, but that was probably one of his most embarrassing moments. For Lotus, I don't know that he's really had any kind of crazy...
Lotus has the embarrassment gene.
Yeah, he doesn't... Yeah, Will said he doesn't have the embarrassment gene. I just, like, he doesn't really do anything that's aloof like that when he's out. His biggest thing is just being reactive to everything. So I would say that's probably his downfall there when it comes to that. Let's see... Z Ultra Assassin says, why did you get a second German Shepherd? We mostly did that because Enzo was at an age where we felt like his training was really at, you know, the peak. He was doing really well with training and very mature at around 2 years old. And just thought that he might like a brother or a sister to hang out with and play with. And you could definitely tell as soon as we brought Lotus home that Enzo was a lot happier to just have someone around all the time to wrestle with in the yard and chase around and someone to go to the park with him. So ultimately, we did it for Enzo. Susie says, how come the pups' mom and dad never get mad at each other? You guys are great. I'm assuming Susie is talking about Will and I. There's a lot that you guys don't see on film. Will and I definitely get mad at each other from time to time, just as every married couple or relationship, you know, people that are in a relationship, they do. So it definitely happens, but you guys only see a tiny bit of our lives on film here. So that's probably why you don't see it. Hussein Jetty says, how do you stop your pups from barking at other dogs and people when they're younger? Biggest way to kind of overcome this, and I always say ahead of time before I answer this question, you really never want to take away their voice. It's their only way to communicate with you, so it's not something that you want to necessarily teach them not to bark. You definitely want them to be aware, and especially if it's a random person or a stranger, you definitely want them to alert you in those situations. But as far as like when they're a pup and, you know, maybe they just haven't socially learned what's appropriate, biggest way to kind of help out with that is take them out in public where there are other noises, where there are other people, where they are interacting kind of with the daily routine of what's going on in the world. And that will eventually kind of desensitize them to that. And so they're not so startled when, you know, you go out or you guys are walking down the street and they see a random person. They're like, oh, we're kind of used to this. So ours are pretty good at that. Lotus, not as much as Enzo. Enzo's really good at that. He will only now bark at someone if they're approaching us and he's just not familiar with them. So he does really well at that. With Lotus's fear reactivity, he struggles with it, but definitely has gotten better. So yeah, that's definitely the best way to overcome that, is just to socialize them as much as you can. Jessica says, how often were the pups in their crates when they were puppies, and for what reasons did they go in there? So really, Will, for the most part, has worked from home almost the entire time that we've had Enzo and Lotus. So Enzo was about, babe, how old was Enzo when you started working from home? Like 6 months or 8 months?
He was like at least a year.
You think a year?
Yeah, because he didn't start training till a year, and I was still working.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for Enzo in that first year, he was really only in the crate if we were both gone from the house. So I was teaching at that point in time, so I was obviously gone all day. And essentially, Will was working at a job where he could leave for a chunk of time in the middle of the day and come home. So really the only time that Enzo was in his crate when he was younger is when we were gone at work. Now, my brother was gracious enough, and we were lucky enough to have a sibling that was able to do that, but he would come up during the times that Will sometimes wasn't here. And there's a helicopter, so that's probably going to get really loud. He would come up during the times that Will wasn't here, and he would get Enzo out of the crate, take him outside to go potty, feed him, play with him, things like that. So we were really fortunate in that situation. And also, in the beginning, you're going to want them to be in there at night, just until you establish that crate training. Now, Enzo was not in his crate at night all the way up to a year. I would say he was probably 4 to 6 months, and he was completely crate trained, and we trusted him at that point in time to be out during the night. So really, when you're gone from the house and at night, if you're still in the process of crate training, Lotus was a little bit different, because when we got Lotus, Will was permanently working from home at that point in time. So he was not in his crate as often as Enzo was when he was growing up. But still, same circumstances apply when we were gone and if they were still in the process of crate training. Neither one of them really spend a whole lot of time in their crate. When we were still crating them, when we would leave the house, when we still didn't trust them to kind of be out and roam on their own, we never left the house for more than 4 or 5 hours at a time. So that would be the longest period of time that ours have really ever been in there. Now we trust them to be out. They don't go in their crates unless they are like, hey, I need a safe space. So for Lotus, when it storms, that's a good place for him to go. But ultimately now they don't really use their crates at all. Good question. Next question is from Meet Jayani. He asks, or she asks, how long is the coat of a German Shepherd? Can they be shaved? Or at least can the coat be trimmed? Answer to that is going to be no and no. So different coat types. So Lotus and Enzo are both, they have short coats. If you've seen Charlie in any of the previous videos, he is more of a long coat German Shepherd. I do believe that there's like a medium coat, but I don't really see it ever referred to that way. It's usually short coat or long coat. But as far as shaving is concerned, definitely not something that you're going to want to do, as well as trimming. When you shave or trim their coat because they have a double coat, it actually prevents them from regulating their body temperature. So that double coat, that coat that's underneath there, it actually in the summer keeps them very cool, and then in the winter keeps them nice and warm. So when you shave or trim that, it prevents them from regulating their body heat. And once it is shaved or trimmed, it never grows back the appropriate way. So then you're kind of dealing with that issue long term. So I would definitely say never shave, never trim a German Shepherd. Highly, highly against that. The only exception would be their, and you've probably seen us do this before, their butts. So their hind there for sanitary reasons. Definitely okay to shave or trim that area, and then the groin area for sanitary reasons you feel the need to do that, you can always trim or shave that area. So those two areas would be the only areas that would be okay. Other than that, no shaving, no trimming. Oh So Nerdy asks, what's your advice on biting as a puppy / chewing on things that they're not supposed to do? Will and the boys just recently did a puppy biting video. It'll be up here, and then I'll have Will link it below as well. So Oh So Nerdy, I suggest that you watch that video. I believe that Will goes over 3 different methods or strategies to use for puppy biting, so definitely check that out. Mark asks, why did you name them Enzo and Lotus? All of our pets, cats included, have been named after cars, and in the future, definitely something where if we got another pup or another cat, we would continue that theme. Zarek says, what are some tips to help people who are getting a German Shepherd? This is another one that Will has done multiple videos on this topic, I believe. We definitely have like a first day tips video, so that again will be up here, and I'll have Will also link that below. So Zarek, definitely check that out for some tips and tricks as far as getting a German Shepherd. Vale says, how do you get your dog to stay when something distracts them and they try to lunge? This is something kind of like a phase that Enzo went through when he was younger, before he had been through obedience training. Definitely something that I would suggest obedience training for. For some reason, it just kind of nips that issue in the bud. I think that they realize, like, hey, I'm in a command. I'm not allowed to leave that command. And if I lunge, I'm going to get a consequence for breaking the command. Enzo never really did it with other dogs, but there were a few times when he was younger, like 6 to 8 months, when him and I would go to the park on our own. He obviously was on a leash back then because he was not off-leash trained, and there would be a jogger that would run by and he would decide that he needed to lunge at them in that situation. Once we got through obedience training, lots of practice involved, of course, that kind of got rid of that situation for him. Jaren says, would you ever consider a Belgium Malinois, and or do you like them? Also, please read this one. I'm your biggest fan. Thank you, Jaren, for being our biggest fan. I don't have anything against the breed at all. They're very, very similar to German Shepherds. They have a lot of the same personality traits and qualities and things like that. They just tend to be a little bit smaller. I don't think that that would be a breed that we would ever consider getting. I think if we ever decide to get another dog, which is still up in the air at this point, again, we've talked about this lots of times, we would definitely have to have a bigger yard, a bigger house, things like that to add another one to the family. But if we ever did get another one, I think that it would either be a German Shepherd, St. Bernard, something along those lines. And again, we've talked about this before in live streams, so I don't think that we would ever consider getting a Belgian Malinois. Nico says, do you think dog insurance is worth getting, and do you have it for both dogs? This is something that we get asked a lot. We do not have dog insurance on either Enzo or Lotus. With the research that we've done, it just doesn't seem worth it for us. Now, in other circumstances for other people, it may be completely different, and we're definitely not against pet insurance in any way, shape, or form. But for the most part, from the research that I've done, it's typically like it only covers very small things or very like catastrophic things. And it just like the injuries that our pups have had never seems to fall in either one of those categories, or it just never would seem to be covered. So just not something that we have considered getting for ours, but definitely something that you should kind of use your own personal situation and kind of gauge it that way to see if that's something that would be a good fit for you. How expensive are German Shepherds and their needs? Will actually did a video on how much we spend on our German Shepherds. Now, we do go a little bit overboard, but I'll go ahead and put the video up here and I'll have him link it below just so you can check that out. You know, as far as just getting them up front, I would say a good bloodline, working line German Shepherd, you're looking anywhere between $800 and $2,000. That's a good price range. They obviously get a little bit more expensive depending on, you know, parents' bloodline, you know, if they have any sort of certifications, any kind of working titles, things like that. But as far as daily expenses are concerned, again, just watch that video that Will did, and he kind of gives an outline and a breakdown of what the costs involved are. And that last question was by Magic Soda. Sorry, forgot to say the name there. All right, what are your thoughts and ideas on outdoor dogs? And also, can you do a morning routine video with your dogs? And also, what made you get German Shepherds? So, kind of 3 questions in one here. I'll try to make sure I answer all of them. We are not big fans of dogs being outdoor dogs, especially this breed. This breed is one that really gets attached to their handler. They are what I call a Velcro breed, so they're just like your shadow 24/7. They thrive off of that connection and the bond and the trust that they have with you. Definitely not a breed that I would recommend having outside. And then in addition to that, and just my personal opinion, I don't think that any dog should be an outdoor dog. Again, that's just my personal opinion. Morning routine, I'll let Will know that you guys want to see a morning routine video. I feel like kind of in a lot of the videos that the boys do, basically like with the daily vlogs, that sometimes you actually get to see the morning routine, but I will pass that along to him. And then last question within that one, what made you get German Shepherds? So nothing specifically. I guess the biggest thing is when we sat down and decided that we were going to add a dog to the family, I had always just liked the German Shepherd breed, and Will always had liked the Husky breed. And when we sat down and did our research, which was definitely not enough research, German Shepherds were just really easy to train, and that's kind of why we went that route. Huskies seemed to be a little bit more difficult to train. Almasa, I think, is how you say that, or Almasa. What kind of dog toys are Enzo and Lotus's favorite? Enzo's favorite by far is Glowball. That is linked in the Amazon store if you're curious about what it looks like, or if you want to get one for your own pup. That is Enzo's favorite. For Lotus, I don't know what his favorite. He likes all toys. What do you think Lotus's favorite is?
Rope or antler or blue ball?
I would say rope or antler are Lotus's favorite. He really likes rope. Like when we come in the house and he's overly excited and he normally will like jump, he has learned basically to go get a comfort toy so that he doesn't jump and get in trouble and have a consequence. So the first toy that he usually picks up in that scenario is rope. So I would say probably rope for him. Tobin says he has 3 questions in one. He has them labeled 1, 2, and 3. Best way to minimize shedding: brush with the Furminator brush, which is also linked in our Amazon store. I have Will put that link below. Furminator brush with that once a day or once every couple of days for just like 10 minutes. That will help minimize shedding in a way that you would not even believe. And then also, like, if you get them groomed, have them blow out their coat. That's something that we just learned recently, taking them to Wolf Pet Spa. They've only been twice now, but the first time that they went, they got their undercoat blown out, and it really did help minimize the shedding. So those would be the 2 things that I would suggest there. Basically, just daily brushing is really going to help minimize it. 2 good names for a GSD pup. Well, we're going to be partial to car names, so I would obviously pick another car name. And then, how did you decide to name Enzo and Lotus? Again, we name all our pets after cars. Aaron asks, how often is too often for playing ball versus a walk? My girl loves playing ball. She lives for it. I try to limit how many times a week we play, thinking it's high impact. Aaron, you are spot on this. We do suggest only like hours. Love fetch, like especially Lotus. Like he has such a high drive for it. We do have to limit them because it is considered a high impact exercise. And with this breed specifically has a lot of joint issues, hip dysplasia, elbow dysplasia, things like that. So to kind of proactively prevent those, we do limit playing fetch like that 2 to 3 times a week. If you wanted to do it every day, you would just do a couple of throws versus 10 or 15 minutes of throwing the ball. So yes, you're right, Aaron, you do want to limit that. We suggest low impact stuff, like you said, walking. Hiking is another one that our boys love and just completely wipes them out because it's so overly stimulating. And then swimming is another good one. In addition to kind of helping with the joint issues and being proactive, we do have supplements that we have both of ours on, so definitely something that you could add into that as well. Allison says, my GSD has a bad habit of barking with his mouth full of food if he hears noises when he eats. Does Enzo and Lotus do this? Yes. So there has been many times where Enzo and Lotus will be in the middle of getting a drink, or they'll be in the middle of a mealtime, and they'll hear the mailman or FedEx or Amazon or whoever pull up outside, and they have no issue with having a mouthful of food and barking all the way to the front door. During basically every week when we clean the house, I always have to go to the window that's in the door, and like at the just like the bottom fourth of it is just like caked on slobber from when they have barked with food or water in their mouth. So definitely a common situation. Jonathan says, did you train them first or send them to puppy school or whatever it's called? Both of ours have been through Off Leash Canine Training. That's the training company that we went through. They're amazing. Highly recommend. Lots of our subscribers have actually gone through them because of our recommendation, and we have heard nothing but positive feedback from them. So Off Leash Canine Training. Enzo started when he was about a year. Lotus started when he was about 5.5 months due to his fear reactivity. We really wanted to kind of dive into that and just kind of figure out what was going on there, and so that helped us really come up with strategies and things that we could use at a younger age versus waiting to put him through it. But yeah, definitely both of ours have been through obedience training. Scott says, did Enzo or Lotus ever have a crack up time between 7 and 8 p.m.? Our 5-month-old GSD just started doing this on Saturday night. Thanks. Scott, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by crack up time. I'm thinking that you mean that possibly they're getting like wound up right before bed. Lotus, not so much, because he is very calm when he's in the house. Enzo, I believe, did kind of go through a stage where he would get super wound up before bed. Best way to battle that is just to wear them out, tire them out with any sort of, like, if you can go outside and play around for a little bit, or anything that's mentally stimulating inside, but just kind of getting them to tire down around that time.
Film outro number 2 because wifey decided to smack the camera and it fell and broke.
Because he didn't have it on here tight enough. And he just gave me a lecture about making sure that it was on tight enough.
Yeah, so the camera's not broken, but I'm pretty sure your lens is.
Okay, so we did not get through all 86 questions. That would take forever, but I did try to get through as many as I could in the time that we had. So we're gonna go ahead and be finished at this point in time, especially now that my camera is broken. Let us know, give us feedback, let us know if you like this format, if you like the question and answer videos, just so we know if we should continue doing them. And Bubba, are you gonna do the outro this time? Since you're front and center, big boy. Say like if that's your thing, subscribe to follow along, ring the bell.